see if oh, there it goes.
You're good.
All right. Good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. Today is Tuesday, September 14th. The time is flying by, and this is the Strategic Planning Committee meeting. So we're going to go ahead and call ourselves to order and move forward. Did everyone get to review the August minutes? Was there any questions, comments, concerns, additions? Anything that we left off?
No.
Nope. All right. Then we're good with that. We can go ahead and move forward. I'm going to turn the agenda right over to you, Brian. So you go right ahead.
So I thought what we would start with tonight, Bonnie in the last meeting brought up a question about kind of like what's the purpose of the Strategic Planning Committee, because it's kind of taken on a lot of different things over time, particularly with COVID, and was just looking for a little bit, I guess, of clarification moving forward on what the Strategic Planning Committee is, what we would focus on, what we would discuss, and how, I guess, this committee really serves the board. So I thought I would start with sharing out what the bylaws definition was, and some past things that we have talked about, and then really open it, I guess, up to me, to Dwayne and Julia and anybody else on moving forward, knowing that one of the key parts of the Strategic Planning Committee was to continue to get feedback and be during the comprehensive planning session portion of our responsibilities as an LEA. And that went all the way back to when we met at TCHS in person, and we had Rick helping us. I mean, that's gone back a while since we started that process. And then once you're kind of like in that comp planning phase of 3 years, what does this committee sort of turn into? So the bylaws definition is that the Strategic Planning Committee shall review and recommend revisions to the curriculum as necessary, recommend educational strategies, establish criteria for the evaluation of faculty and student performance, and establish and implement provisions for regular assessment of the academic performance of the student body. The Strategic Planning Committee shall work with the principals in developing criteria for the evaluation of faculty and student performance, and the committee shall hold monthly public meetings. So it has a couple specific things in there, but then also is somewhat broad at the same time. I think when we have talked about the Strategic Planning Committee in the past, it's kind of ended up being, for better or for worse, somewhat of like a catch-all committee of what we need to talk about. And some of the things that we've done over the last couple of years is we've really focused on our comprehensive plan and the strategic plan that needed to be submitted to the state. When we did our middle states accreditation, those plans and those action plans were brought to the Strategic Planning Committee before submission. We've had curriculum discussions and purchasing discussions in this committee. Every year we bring the proposed academic calendar before this committee to get feedback, because it's typically made up of staff representatives and parents. And we're going to talk about that in a little while. So we've brought up the calendar and utilize this committee as a vehicle to get some feedback before going to the working session and the full board. When we did our FIT application, we talked about that a lot. This also is the committee where some policy review comes up if needed. We worked on our curriculum development framework, and that was with Jen Weaver and when Rick was working with us for a little while on what that looks like and how we are reviewing and developing our curriculum writing and revision process. We've talked about the high school schedule a couple of times, and that's going to be coming up again. We've done presentations in this Strategic Planning Committee regarding facilities expansion, whether it was modular usage, the expansion at ELC, and now we've started to talk about State Road, and we talked about the collaboratory here and the cafe, sort of tied to academics and operations of those spaces, where the actual facility planning and the financial planning of those projects were in those committees, but how we were going to use the space was discussed here over the last 20 months, we did a lot of COVID protocol discussion in this one. And then we always share out the academic achievement data yearly here before going to the board. So that's kind of some things I've cherry picked that I know, and going through some old minutes of things that we have talked about. Now, a lot of that still does kind of come back to what the original bylaws definitions are. And really, I just wanted to kind of, Dwayne and Julia, I guess, as the board representatives on the board strategic planning committee, get your sense, or anybody else, of what you would like to see happen now that we are submitting a comprehensive plan, how you envision the committee working with the administration that's here, and then the teachers and parents that we're going to be asking to join moving forward. I'm kind of calling you out on the spot. I apologize.
Okay.
But I think it's useful. You guys are the board representatives, and we serve you guys as well.
Well, I'll let Julia talk in a second here. For me, I think what you have is a great foundation. I'm just going along for trying to figure this out with you guys, so you'll forgive me. But my ultimate goal is to support you guys. So help you build your whatever you need, and increase that foundation, and then push it forward to the board with you guys, and get what you need. It's not how I want to run the school, it's how you want to run the school within those confines, and we push it forward.
Sure. I think maybe what would be helpful would be maybe like, would you like to see these meetings being more report out and feedback gathering? Would you like them to be more work-based, like we're coming to work and there's assignments and things to do, and it's really part of a larger collective group of working towards things? It could be a mix of the two depending on the topics and what's coming up.
That's what I was thinking, Brian. Okay. A mix of the two. Absolutely. So like, what do we need in order to further the vision? And let's do that thing. So that requires like a lot of really good communication between administration and us, and just looping us in. And then like Dwayne said, like, however, we as board members support you all as staff and faculty and administration, like that's what I'm interested in. So whatever's going to work best for that. So if there's an assignment, or if there's some sort of action item that we need, but like, I'm super interested in feedback gathering. Like that's really important to me to know that kind of thing. Climate, like how are things going at the school? Like I was excited to come here tonight to hear like I know my kids are there, and I know that we're having a great first couple weeks, but like I want to hear how things are happening, like for you all as staff and faculty and parents, like other parents, and like how are we feeling about things? Like all of that I think is really important for this committee, because when I look at that bylaws definition and then I look at the topics, I'm like, this is kind of a big deal. Like this strategic planning committee is broad, and we handle a lot of stuff. So whatever we need to do to, like I said, further the vision and support you all and get the job done, that's what I'm interested in doing. So but I'm brand new. So this is my first board, and this is my first like month on the board. So I just need to be told, like, shoot me an email, like give me a direction, and I'm happy to jump on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's helpful that the conversation is had, so that the first two agenda items kind of go together, because now that I think it's time to kind of refresh too. Like we had a lot of parents at the beginning who came to those in-person sessions at the beginning and provided that feedback, and then they've kind of dropped off over time, or their kids have graduated, or they're not here anymore. So now that we're in the process of submitting the required comprehensive plan, and we've developed all those other objectives and initiatives that the school's going to be looking at over the next couple of years. I think resending out to staff and parents, and I already spoke about getting some kids representation on the committee when it's applicable and appropriate, for them to be there, so that, but when that goes out for an interest survey, so that parents are aware that, hey, there's a time commitment, there might be work, you're going to have to be asking, we're looking for your feedback. This isn't a place just to come and air your grievances because there's an administration and 2 board members. It's a place to try to set a foundation and provide progress and feedback for the school in a condensed manner, instead of just sending out a survey that we get 1,800 responses to.
No, I think that's good, Brian. And just
Absolutely.
because, you know, my feeling is just because I'm on a board, your board, I'm here more as a parent than a board member. There's nothing that I or Julia can do during this meeting that affects anything. It all goes back to 9 people next Tuesday. So, and we're just 2 of 9. So that's what we're doing.
Dwayne, I think what happens when we have different committee board members, it is me. Sorry. I'm in a car. I'm kind of driving around at the same time. So I'm listening. You won't see me. But I think what happens is, like Brian's describing, depending on the board members how they're involved, they like to see our feedback in different ways. So I do like that you're excited. I see all the excitement in there, Julia. And I like the idea of you liking a combination of, here's the information we gathered. Now let's talk about some feedback on this committee specifically, because this is where all the magic happens and then disperses out to the other committees. So I appreciate that piece of it, but I think it's more about, you know, how you want to see it so that we are most productive.
Okay. Well, let's move forward with a combination. You know, neither one of us can answer that right now because we haven't been on this committee. So we're going to mold it as we go, but let's work. You know, we're both here ready to do whatever we need to do to support you guys, work, whatever it is. So, Julie,
can I ask, Brian, is the plan done? Is that completed? Because the last interaction that I had with it was in like June or whatever when we did the retreat, and it was like almost done.
Yeah, so I sent a calendar invite. I think it was yesterday. It might have been, could have been this morning. The days are all running together.
Okay.
Of the draft parts of the comp plan. So, and I can pull them up and share. I was going to do a quick review just of all of the parts. It's like 100 and some pages when everything is said and done. But wanted to give just a real brief, like, this is what this part means. This is what this part means. And then the part that really is applicable to this committee would be looking at the action plans that we put together for the high school or the state road instructional time evaluation, and then the equity action team and the social emotional learning and PBIS action plans. So those are 2 of the ones where you go and it's like, okay, well, what are they actually going to do? Like, those are the two parts that you really want to look at. The rest of it is a lot of information gathering, and I'll talk about those. So in the calendar invite, and I added it to the board docs content because it's all draft right now. There's a couple different parts that you can go and look at. I'm not going to open them just because and share them. They're available if you want to go through. But the major parts, the first part was an academic standards and assessments requirement. So this portion of the comprehensive plan had us have to go back and look at our standard alignment and standards framework for what we're teaching and the resources that we use in our classrooms. So we had to go through and evaluate and make a lot of assurances related to curriculum instruction. Things like, do we teach the PA core standards? Is there consistency and continuity between what we say our planned courses are, what our instructional units look like, what our lesson plans look like, and the standards that are required through the Department of Education? Do our courses have objectives, and do our teachers write objectives that all students are able to identify and understand? So we had to go through and do a lot of assurance checks. It also had us look at each of the Danielson frameworks and where we believed we were strong, where we believed a little bit of work could be done with regards to planning and preparation and classroom environment and instruction. And then it also talked about what assessments do we use? How do we allow students to provide evidence of mastery? And are there certain courses like art classes that students do portfolio work? Are there certain classes that are paper-based and or utilize statewide assessments? So it was really combing through all of our core curriculum, all of our core classes, and doing a lot of assurance checks for the Department of Education. And then also coming up, if you go into that document, you can see a list of all of the major assessments that we administer, K through 12, what grades we administer the assessments, and then the frequency and duration that we utilize. So it's bringing together sort of a mini assessment plan that's also available on our website right now. So that's the first part of the comprehensive plan. The next part was a student services assurances section. This section wasn't as long, and it was basically going through and identifying what programs that we have at our school, and answering a lot of yes/no assurance questions. Do you have a school-wide positive behavioral support program? Do you have a bullying prevention program? Do you have a program that offers peer helpers? Do you have safety and violence curriculum that you're focusing on with students in 6th to 12th grade, which is a requirement? Do you have a SRO and a security officer at the school? And it's okay to say no to things. It's just kind of collecting a lot of the information so that you're being reflective and evaluating those student services and supports that you have at the school. As well as there's certain acts out there, Act 71, Chapter 12 requirements, parts of the school code where we're required to do things that we have to say, yes, we've done this. Yes, we've done this. Yes, we've done this. Any questions on those two sections so far? Just what it is. They weren't too time consuming. The next two parts is our induction plan. So our induction plan is a Chapter 49 requirement that we have to submit every 6 years. So every 6 years, we have to submit to the Department of Education what our induction plan is, which means what do we do with new teachers? When we hire new teachers and we hire new staff, what does our onboarding process look like? And what do we do with them from the required educator induction plan? Every teacher has to go through an induction plan, and there's certain requirements laid out in the school code that we have to do. So a number of it of that plan was going through, and it was yes/no assurances, but then also collecting information about how do we pair mentors and mentees together? What are the topics that we cover throughout our induction program with teachers, and how long is that program? How do all of those topics align to the Danielson framework for teaching, which is how teachers are evaluated? Why do we pick those topics? And then when do we teach those topics? So, for example, we talk about school safety and emergency drills fairly early with new teachers, because that's something that they need when they're starting in our buildings. So you can see a sort of mapped out of what we cover, when we cover it, as well as what we require of our new teachers in terms of demonstrating their satisfactory completion, I would say, of our induction program through sort of like portfolio requirements and submissions of artifactual evidence. And then what delivery format we have that through. So you can go in and see all of that information of what we put our new teachers through for their induction plan. So that again, that has to be submitted with our comp plan, and then it comes up as a piece every 3 years in the comp plan, but then you have to sort of resubmit a larger section every 6, and we were up for our 6. The next part is the comprehensive plan, and that comprehensive plan is a little bit more of a meatier document, and the comprehensive plan has us really focus on needs assessments, root cause analysis, and then what are you going to do as a school moving forward to impact student achievement, or the social emotional health of students, or the operations of the school, Some schools have facility-based objectives and goals in there. So it's really, what does the school want to focus on? The Department of Ed typically looks for 2 or 3 main things in the comprehensive plan. And I think where we had a lot of discussion early on was, how does the comprehensive plan and the school's strategic plan sort of mesh together as 2 puzzle pieces? And I think when we were talking about it, we've talked a number of times that the words can sometimes be synonymous, but there's a lot more that we do as a school within the next 3 years than just these 2 major initiatives, right? We have a building project going on. We have reevaluating our one-to-one program. We have an instructional coaching framework that we're working on. So those are all parts of our school strategic plan. But from the state's requirement, we needed to send them 2 ones that we were really going to focus on. And when we sent out a number of surveys to staff and to parents, we met with the IU, who facilitated some of our needs assessment work early on, and looked at a framework that the Department of Ed provides us, which is the essential practices for schools. So we had to go through and rate ourselves in a number of areas. The staff rated us, parents rated us, students rated us, and we brought all of that information together to see where our strengths were, where we were sort of operational in certain aspects, whether it was instructional support or student services or resource allocation. There was a number of things. And came up with the 2 areas that we really wanted to focus on the next 2 years, a lot of our time and effort and resources and human capital. And that was around our equity action teams work with social emotional learning, which you've heard Ryan talk a lot about. And there's a lot to that, as well as coming back and trying to align the facilities expansion at State Road with a new building, with coming back and having an honest conversation again about what our schedule looks like at State Road for instructional time purposes. And that one is sort of a multi-headed beast, because we have a building project going on. We have a district who we have half of our students come from, who's about to roll out a new building and probably going to be changing their schedule. We come from seven different districts. We within one campus have multi-layers of schedules, because we have an elementary and a middle and a high school schedule that all sort of have to jive together, with multiple lunch periods and one gym. So there's a lot of things that go into that, that we're trying to have good conversations about coming up, as in how do we progress forward, and what really do we need as a school to support students and support our operations. And now's the time to try to pull, if we're going to pull off a change, now's the time to do it. So that was going to be in there. And then in the comprehensive plan, you can go in and you can see the nuanced steps that we said that we were going to have to go through in each of those areas: the social emotional learning action plan and the instructional time action plan. Step by step, what we said we were going to be doing, what the anticipated start and completion time is, who's responsible, and then if there's any professional development or communication steps needed with regards to those individual action steps. So it does spell out over the next 3 years in good chunks of time what we want to accomplish to help keep us accountable and moving forward to meeting what our goal statements were. And then within that as well, if there's any professional development required, we had to spell out what that professional development was, who's providing it, what are the goals of that professional development, and how are you monitoring and evaluating the effectiveness of that professional development for whether it's staff or administration or community. That all had to be spelled out and tied to the specific action steps. So that one's a little bit longer. And those two action items, along with the other pieces of things that we had talked about as part of our strategic plan, all came out of those surveys and those focus groups, either that Rick had held early on in our comp plan process, or the feedback from the essential practices for school surveys that we had sent out to staff, as well as things that we've noticed have been on the docket. For example, the next agenda item is an action plan that is part of our school strategic plan. It's not part of our comprehensive plan that deals with coming back and reevaluating our supplemental contract and supplemental pay process that we're going to go through this year. And that's basically how are we equitably assigning monetary values to advisors and clubs and sports and fall play and all the things that the teachers do to support our students. We want to make sure that it's time to revisit that because a lot of that has been it's been ad hoc and as well as stagnant over the last couple of years, and we want to have an honest conversation and work with our staff to come to a place where they feel supported in their extra duties that they're giving their time to support students and provide those extracurricular activities for the kids at our school, and that they really come to love and oftentimes for a lot of kids drives them for attendance. So that's one of the action plans that's included in the agenda to look at in a second. So moving forward, I shared that all out. The board will get their copies and a brief overview at the working session next week. Then it'll go up on the website as with a survey for public review and comment for 28 days. And then it will come to the board for an approval vote in October with a November 1 submission deadline for the Department of Ed. And I already had the PDE team look over it. And they said that it shouldn't get kicked back to us for anything. So it should clear everything as it is. That was a lot. And I told Ryan I wasn't going to try to keep everybody late tonight. She told me, you know how much I talk. But
that was a lot.
Questions.
Thank you, Brian. Julia, do you have anything?
I mean, I have like a jillion questions, but they don't need to get these are questions for me just to know. So it's not anything that needs to happen right now. But yeah, that's quite a whole thing you just laid out there, Brian. That was a big deal. So thank you. And thank everybody that put time in on that, because that's a big deal for sure. How often do we do this comprehensive plan? How frequently does that need to happen?
3 years.
Every 3 years? Okay.
Yep. So the goal, these two major items would be starting in 2021 and ending by June of 2024 is okay. But what's hard about these is if they keep the timelines the way they are, this plan will end in June of 2024, but our next plan will be due in November of 2023, which we'll have to start planning for by really October of 2022 is when you got to start. So you're really in the middle of the work for this one when you have to start doing the next one. They really don't give a gap for anything, which I guess you don't want to have a gap and say, yeah, we don't have a plan right now, but it does make it difficult when you're kind of in the midst of these major initiatives, and then the whole process starts over again, basically in 18 months from now. Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I know we had shared this before, but I have been working on getting all of the items so that we can track progress and it's visible to the public as well. So if you go to the website and to the board page and you go to strategic dashboard, I've shared this a couple times. You can go to the strategy section and now see what, for our school strategic plan, the 4 areas that we had come up with, which was rigorous teaching and learning, support for all learners, championing community, and modernizing our facilities and systems. You can see our goal statement. And if you click on it, you can see the things that we had said were our actionable objectives. And then as we're progressing through this, we're able to enter, we're a quarter of the way through, we're 50% of the way through, we're done this one, that's good, and move on to the next one so it's visible for everybody to see. But a lot of these things are not things that were in our comprehensive plan, but we've identified them as major initiatives we want to focus on over the next couple years.
That looks really good, Brian. Good job.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you. That's a lot. Also,
so if you want to, it's kind of the condensed, you can see it, and they all just drop down so you can see where we're at.
Yeah.
You're going to present that
Great.
at the working session as well?
Yep.
Yeah, you should be proud. That looks really good.
The last thing on the agenda, and this is again more just discussion and FYI. One of the things that we had talked about wanting, like I said, wanted to spearhead this year was looking at our supplemental contract and activities, and having this discussion with our teachers and with Quest and with Human Resources and with the business office on what it looks like for our student activities, and how are we coming up with these supplemental pay amounts, and what's fair in comparison to some of the things that our teachers do. And it gets brought up a lot. I had an example this year where, it was, well, why is this supplemental getting this much money and this other one is only getting this X amount, right? So those conversations happen because it's everybody's time and effort. And while we're teachers and are altruistic and want to do what's best for students, there is money that is tied to some of the things that we do when we're asking people to go way above and beyond what their agreement is as a staff member. So one of the challenges that we have is we've had this what is viewed as sort of an inequitable supplemental contract process, and we haven't really re-examined how those amounts are come up with, knowing money's finite, right? Like I can't shake the money tree. I don't know where Donna hides it, but I can't shake the money tree and make more money appear to be able to just pay a lot of people.
Shaking the money tree. You better stop right now.
Brian,
I think
never hide any money.
No, I didn't say hide the money. I said hide the money tree.
Shake the tree.
Oh, I don't
Shake the
even do
tree.
that. I share everything.
So we can't shake the money tree. So I think going into this conversation, it has to be understood that money is a finite resource that we have. And as we increase things in one area, that means we may not be able to increase things in another area later on. That's just the way that it works. But wanted to go through this exercise so that we said we would analyze, evaluate, and implement a system for establishing supplemental and activity contracts for AGCS staff in an equitable manner. And that's really the goal. And then it was, what do we really need to do over the next year to try to have those conversations, collect information from surrounding schools and districts on how they facilitate that process, usually through their CBA agreements, collect teacher feedback and have those meetings with teachers, and sit down and have honest conversations with Human Resources and the finance department on what we're able to do and how do we move forward so that's equitable and fair and transparent for this process. And ultimately, the goal is that we have high quality programs for our students to be able to participate in, and that's really the end goal. We don't want to lose clubs because of those types of things. So this will be one of the things that we check in on as a strategic planning committee going through this year as well.
Cool. Brian, how do we do it today?
So most of the clubs we kind of have used, and Donna, feel free to jump in too. But we've kind of had a lot of clubs who have been established for a while, right? And they have a monetary value that's been tied to them over time. When new clubs come in, we try to look at time and effort in comparison to existing clubs that are there. Like oh, if you're going to be an advisor for X club, the time and effort of that is somewhat similar to Y club. Y club gets paid this amount of money. Therefore, that's usually what that is. But I don't know if we've had conversations recently that have been comprehensive about really what time and effort are going into these things and what we're able to do, again, knowing money's a finite resource.
Right.
So that's really the exercise we want to go through.
Thank you.
Brian, I think you said that very well. Thank you.
Any questions from anyone else or staff that are on? Lauren, I know this is an issue that we've brought up a couple times, and I think it's helpful that this is going to be talked about with the staff moving forward.
Absolutely. I think this is something that's come up in Quest meetings and that we've talked about it. And unfortunately, some of the events of the last few years have become, far more of a priority in the short term. But I think that this is I'm really happy to see this as a long-term goal and discussion for us.
Good.
Well, that's what I had for this evening. So if there's any other issues that need to be brought up or questions or things that need to be addressed, there was no comments that were submitted. I know that, the only other item, I don't know, Dwayne, if you want to reiterate our discussion about the meeting schedule and what we were going to be doing, because it is separate, different from the previous minutes that we had just approved.
No, after discussing it with you and Kristen's feedback, thank you. We'll just keep it this way. This is fine. 7:30. We do have the board has a retreat at the next meeting. And what I'll do is at the board meeting, we'll push our retreat before, because we were trying to keep it later so people could attend, but I think we'll move it before this meeting and keep this at 7:30. And the Zoom is fine. Does that, I want the most participation. I don't want it. I thought it would be more convenient for everybody, but I didn't think about the teachers getting home and their kids. So I apologize. We're all good.
Yeah, and I think that if a meeting agenda is going to necessitate in-person breakouts and things like that, as long as we give the notice, we can kind of move back and forth.
We're here for you.
All right. That's all I have.
Right.
Our next meeting.
Thank you so much, Brian. That was massive. So thank you. I do appreciate that. I feel a little bit better informed now. So thank you.
Yeah. Me too. I started reading all that. It is a lot to read. All right. Is there anything else? Does anyone have anything else? And our next meeting, Brian, can you give me the date?
October 12th.
October 12th, 7:30, same Zoom station. So we should be set to go. All right, unless there's anything else, we're going to adjourn. Everyone have a great night, and we'll see you next time.